tonight's episode of the Group Therapy Podcast. As you can see, Brandon is not here. We have a special guest, Eric Whiting.
Hello.
Eric is a movie director out of Dayton. You tell us some...
Sure. So I live, technically it's Waynesville now, but, I'm based out of Dayton, so that's true. So I've made a few feature films. The most known is Primordial from 2015. That was on Amazon Prime for a little bit till it got taken down last year.
That's because they had that big purge of all the indie films off of there for a while.
Yeah,
I've seen some of them pop back up, but not many.
Yeah, specifically they cracked down on the self-distributed ones. I mean, because in 2016, if you met the tech specs, you were allowed to post your own movie, and if they accepted it, they accepted it. But then, I don't know if they just found it overcrowded or what, but for whatever reasons they purged a lot of self-distributed movies last year. So yeah, Primordial was of that bunch.
Have you? Some of them have popped back up on Voodoo.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know because I know that's the you can run it with commercials or you can rent or buy.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know if you've done anything with that or anything.
Not yet. I'm trying to look into what other options there are. There is a site called Film Hub. It's a self-distribution platform where you upload your content and then you hit submit and then they put it to the site and whoever accepts it.
Cool. That's pretty cool. I mean, it sucks it was taken off, and I knew something about that. There was this big purge, but I didn't know if it was just, I didn't know it was self-distributed movies or if it was just, because I know a lot of people on Facebook. I follow some other people, and they were complaining because they took down a lot of movies.
They did. Now, of course, me saying it was self-distributed movies, that's just what I've noticed. There's probably some movies that were put out by other distributors that were also taken down too, but I think the self-distributed ones were hit a little harder, is more so what it was.
It's probably more noticeable than if it was just the people that have, it's like, hey, I've only got 3 movies up here, where are my movies?
Yeah.
So, but I noticed, because a lot of these guys are trying, because I follow, SOV, the Shot on Video guys and stuff like that, are putting out some stuff, and some of them guys are putting stuff up, and I know friend of both of us, Henrik, he's got some movies up on Prime too. That's what I kind of. His aren't self-distributed anymore. They're all through.
Well, some of them.
Some of them. I'm not sure exactly how he does all his movies. I know some of his stuff is.
Some of it's put out through another company. Some of it was made for. I don't want to speak for. I don't know all the details.
Yeah.
Some were distributed through another company and some were self-distributed.
Okay, cool. But I know that we worked together on 2 movies. Mm-hmm. One was never finished. What was finished was never edited and released.
That was
Church of Eyes. Yeah. We both played murderers.
Mm-hmm. That was a fun day.
That get murdered. That was real fun because the whole end of that, I got most of the makeup off, but I still had stuff in my hair because we're literally out in the middle of nowhere with no running water.
Yeah, that's right.
And so we're literally like taking bottles of water trying to wash the stuff out of our hair and off our face. I had been up at that point, I think, when I finally went home. I was up in about 36 hours.
Oh, wow.
So I had part of the makeup still on. I was just getting tired because I worked 3rd shift. And I went, and then we got up, did that, drove all the way down to, I can't remember where we were at. We were I want to say at one time it was a greenhouse, like Douglas, Florida, or something like that. And we did that all, and we were there a big chunk of the day. We got cleaned up. I came home. I was starved. And I stopped at Wendy's on the way back. And I roll up and I look at the lady behind the window. She's just like, her eyes get real big. I think I took the bullet hole out of my head. And I still had part of the scar going down my face makeup. And I had blood and chunks of stuff in my hair. And that girl was just like, I just want a baked potato. I'm hungry. Then I got home. I got my shower, got cleaned up, finally crashed. Thought I got everything off. I wake up the next wake up later on that night and you can see my face was in the pillow because there was an owl on my eyeball and everything. Then the second movie, we did nothing. I just literally wore a T-shirt. We went in from the background scene and went home.
That was for Bullock for Christmas.
Yeah. Because we were, you were
It was just an extra.
You were an extra, but weren't you doing something else that day? Weren't you like a?
Oh, it was at the place where I worked.
So I knew you were doing some other stuff there, but that was fun times.
Yeah.
Fun times. I was cast for one other movie that wasn't connected to either one of you, and I was actually going to get to play the guy. Don't go out there, kid. You're going to die out there.
Oh, really?
That was going to be me, and I never got to because we could never. My work schedule and their shooting schedule could never mesh up, and
I see.
And it was like, okay. So I never got to be the guy that tells kids they're going to die in the woods.
Yeah.
So because I'm getting too old to be the guy who gets killed in the woods. Once you get to a certain point, and you start getting too much gray hair and going bald and shit like that. You don't get to play the people that get killed in the movies. You get to tell the people that are going to get killed in the movie. But tell us about what you've put out, what you've done.
Sure.
So we can. We want everybody to know about your movies. We want people to know, what you've worked on, because I know you've done some work for. You've done some camera work for Henrik, didn't you?
Yeah, I've also edited just about everything he's done since 2013. So
yeah. You've got some time under your belt there. Tell us, or which one of your movies are still available? Do you have all of them still available?
Yeah, so on Amazon, Hellhounds, because that was put on the regular rental service, that was just kind of grandfathered in. And last I checked, that's still there. So on Vimeo, I know Vimeo's not as popular of a site, but I do have all three of my feature films on Vimeo to rent internationally, so that is nice, because Amazon doesn't go to every country.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, everything's on Vimeo. I'm trying to get, like I said, I'm using FilmHub. I'm trying to get my 2019 movie Ragnarok onto. I'd like to see it on Tubi because Tubi's a nice site.
Yeah, Tubi's fun. That was one of the ones that surprised me. Everybody's like, "Hey, have you watched Tubi yet?" I'm like, "What?" I would put it on there. It's like, "Oh, okay, this is awesome." I'm watching every dumb thing on Tubi.
Last time I checked, they had a pretty good selection. Like even my own Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the original. I found it on Tubi the other week, which was nice. I put it on for my cat to watch. And then I needed to rewatch The Old Hills Have Eyes for another podcast I recorded in September. So even I'd seen it before, it had been a while, so I actually found that on Tubi. So it was nice.
Yeah. Okay. We're gonna do this. You're talking about being online or being in physical. Which one are you? Are you a physical media guy, or are you you're fine with the digital version?
By heart, I'm a physical media guy. I don't feel like I own something unless I have a physical copy of it. And there's a handful of movies that are just too expensive to buy on Blu-ray or whatever, and I don't feel like blowing $50 on a Blu-ray of like Flight of the Intruder, if any of you remember that movie. So that's one I got from Amazon for their download service.
See, what's funny is that I am a physical media guy, and I've gotten to the point now where some of the stuff I got, it stopped at Laserdisc.
Oh, wow.
So, like, I own the Keep, and I have like 2 VHS copies and a Laserdisc. And I guess they're finally releasing it, but it's like an Australian version of it.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know. I was like, okay, do I invest in a region-free DVD player so I can have another DVD player floating around the house?
I'd kind of like to get one of those. There's a handful of movies that are that were only released in Australia or England or something that I would like to have, but a region-free player for that.
Oh yeah. Well, there's one that's killing me, and I don't know why. For no reason, I've never been able to find out why this movie's never been released on outside of, I think, as far as it goes is Laserdisc. Eyes of Fire.
Oh yeah.
You ever seen that one?
No, I haven't seen that.
I want to say, I joke around saying it's the Blair Witch prequel. It's an 80s movie. A lot of people remember the cover because it's got like the trees in the background has the one girl walking forward. it's a witch story. These people travel to this valley because it looks like it's fertile and stuff like that, but the Native Americans want nothing to do with it, and they find out that there's like this witch that's there, and it starts messing with the people that live there, and then there's the witch that was with the group that everybody didn't know was a witch, but she was a good witch, and then the bad witch. I found one DVD copy, German. That's it. It's one of them. Okay, fine. But yeah, like I said, we were sitting there talking earlier before we started shooting. I was like, I know I've got your copy of Hellhounds here somewhere.
And on the note of Hellhounds, I was talking about physical media. It was from 2016 until early this year. It was actually out of print. I didn't know if I would ever put it back in print again or not, but I actually put out a 2-disc DVD edition earlier this year. So, yeah, for any of you who were physical media collectors, my first feature film, Hellhounds, is on DVD once again, and I'm going to try to keep it.
Just try to keep some of them in stock. And have you tried going to Blu-ray on any of them?
Yeah, actually, so Ragnarok was the first one that I just put out on Blu-ray right away. I'm not going to do Blu-ray for Hellhounds. There is an HD download that you can get from Vimeo, but it was shot on DSLR, and just tech-wise, Blu-ray wouldn't really do it many favors. I'm actually in the process of putting Primordial on Blu-ray, because it works with Henrik to get that on Blu-ray. It has new artwork, some new special features and stuff, so
yeah,
that'll be on Blu-ray too.
And that's another thing is one of the things I love about Blu-rays and DVDs and stuff like that is that you don't get on the digital stuff is the behind the scenes, the making ofs and stuff like that, and all the featurettes.
Yeah, I think some sites are trying to incorporate that, like at HBO Max, there's a handful of titles on there where it'll have like a behind the scenes feature as another playable option.
I know Shop Factory's
Yeah.
Streaming service has that, which that's cool they have that.
So there's obviously still demand for that stuff. I think that nowadays with a lot of stuff gets put on YouTube. I was talking earlier with someone about how I remember a lot of VHSs as a kid would have like trailers for movies. Like I remember a trailer for The Nightmare Before Christmas that was on the beginning of one of the Disney VHSs I had. And it had like behind the scenes shots and stuff. So that was more in the pre-internet days. That was more of a specialty thing. Nowadays, it doesn't take much to go on YouTube or something and find that kind of footage.
What's funny was one of the things was a Carnosaur. VHS copy of Carnosaur had the trailer for the never released, legally released, Fantastic Four movie.
Oh, really?
The Corman one, yeah. There it is, Eyes of Fire. And of course, my stupid computer's going to make me load that back up. But yeah, and then what was the other one? Is if you found the first early versions of the rental copy of The Crow had the teaser for The Crow 2, and I believe it has a completely different cast list as the actor in it. There it is, Eyes of Fire. Boom. And the funny part about it is it's just one of the movies that
it's a western.
They're traveling through there's you'll recognize like one person in this movie. It's the old lady that's the loud, really old.
Let's see, the only major live role for Rob Paulson. Oh,
yeah,
Pinky from Pinky and the Brain.
Yep.
When I hear the name Rob Paulson, I think of Fight Club, but then I remember there was a
yeah.
with that name in real life.
Paulson. Oh man.
That's cool. So that's the only live
action
role for that guy.
Well, it's like I have a buddy who's big into Tara Strong, who did all the voiceover acting for like Harley Quinn. She did voiceover acting for.
Oh, isn't she in Drawn Together?
Yeah, she's yeah. I think her only legit one of her was National Lampoon Senior Trip with a really young Hawkeye in it before he became Hawkeye for the Marvel Universe. All right. Like I said, tell us about some of the people you've worked with. You know, I know, like I said, we talked about Henrik. We haven't talked about Andy, but Andy was a great guy. Did you ever do any other work with him outside of
Church of the Eyes.
Church of the Eyes?
No, see, it's kind of weird because I only knew Andy in person from 2012 until 2013 when he died, but I knew of him before that because, like, Mutilation Man throughout the Dayton region especially had a big reputation for being, because at that time it was rare to make a movie like that in that area, so, like, I know it was Jim Von Bever before that, and Andy knew Jim Von Bever as well, but, like, Mutilation Man had a big reputation in the area, so as a teenager I learned of that movie, and it was actually available on Netflix through their DVD service at that time.
Oh, yeah. Well, what's funny is that I lived in Tip City in 2001 to 2002, and that was when Andy was working for the TV station. And I was sitting there one night, all of a sudden they're like, oh, Shop Theater's on. Oh, holy crap. Hey, that's the TV station that's right around the corner from my house. Literally, it was 2 blocks. It was like, boom, boom, down around the corner, and there he was. And we went, and one night he goes, hey, do you want to do something on public access? I'm like, yeah. So I got up the next day, went over, and met Andy, and we became friends over a period of time, and I'd sat there when I was supposed to be editing my television show, which is where this came from. We did a group therapy television show in Tip City, and it ran from Troy to north of Dayton. And we'd sit there and bullshit and do when I was supposed to be in there editing, and he'd tell me stories, and then Dr. Creek would come in every once in a while and hang out. And I actually left the TV station one night because he always told me that if he was there, you could come in and edit, you could do whatever you wanted. And I worked switch shift, so second/third. So I worked 3 days on second, 2 days on third. So I was up in the middle of the night, and he was a night owl, so I went in there and started hanging out, and I was walking to my apartment, which, like I said, was 2.5 blocks away, and I'm about a half a block away from my house, and a cop pulls up, hits his lights. Mind you, this is Tip City, Ohio, which is small town America as small town America gets, pretty much. And I had to stand out there and the cops asked me a billion questions, like, what's in the bag? Videotapes. Why do you have a box full of videotapes? I just left the TV station. Why? TV station, it can't be open. It's 2 o'clock in the morning.
They really don't know TV stations.
Yeah. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, no. And then they're like, well, it's a little late to be out. I'm like, oh, I'm an adult. So
you're just walking.
Yeah, walking down the street at 2 o'clock in the morning. They're about 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. And I walk along, and next thing you know, cop pulls up, and then another cop pulls up. So they're parked, like this. And mind you, I'm an adult. I mean, I'm not even remotely a kid. I have 2 children of my own at this point. And the whole entire time, the cop's like telling me, he's like, oh, it's a little late to be out. I'm like,
it's a public place.
It's a public place. I'm an adult, so no, it's not. The cop went back, went to the TV station, found Andy was still there, came back, and he goes, well, you're free to go. You need to get home. Why? I am going home, but why? So
curfew.
Yeah, it's like, I know we're living in Tip City, and I know that you guys pull up the sidewalks at 10 o'clock at night, but I had many, and then I kind of lost touch with him for a while, and then when he did Church of Eyes, and he did all the stuff over there in Inglewood and stuff, and we started hanging out more, but then things happened, but no, like I said, but I've met a lot of good people through him. I met you, I met Henrik, and then through Henrik I met more people, and next week, everything goes all right. I got Erin coming in. She's going to come in and do one. So we're going to see about things from there. But, I had questions there, but I don't know what the hell I did with them. So movies. Tell us, what do you do to get what you want? Do you go, like, like, when I write stuff like that, I gotta be in a certain mood, because if I don't, I can't write.
Yeah, that's how I am. I actually kind of exaggerating, but I do have to be kind of miserable in order to actually have something I want to write, because whenever I'm happy or enjoying life, I'm too busy doing that.
Yeah, you're too happy and busy.
And I mean, I may come up with ideas in that time, but it's not until I'm kind of miserable or whatever that it actually starts to have any weight to it. Like, with Ragnarok, when I put out in 2019, I started writing it actually during a good time, during when Primordial was doing well. I really didn't have much urge I only wanted to make a movie just to do it, but it wasn't really some passionate drive. So I was brainstorming ideas. Like, it'd be kind of cool to do some sort of horror mix of zombie and ghost tropes, and that was about the extent of it. And then I started to deal with some depression myself for a period of time in early 2017, and that was when the story finally took some weight in my head, was dealing with that. So that's where a lot of the movie deals a lot with, more so with PTSD, which I really haven't dealt with in my life, but yeah, just dealing with a bit of depression in early 2017 over just existential dread and adult stuff. That's what made the movie have more weight, and that's where the rest of it really emerged from. Before that, it was just like, well, maybe I'll do this horror movie, and then it kind of evolved from there.
But I've always felt when I've always had stuff going the right way, like you said, it doesn't flow. And it's funny because I watched a couple documentaries a while back on, like, Edgar Allan Poe and H.P. Lovecraft, and you're like, these people were miserable their entire life.
That's why they wrote.
And that's why they wrote so much, and why they wrote so prolifically. And when they were happy, the writing kind of stopped. And then when the misery came back around, that's writing started again.
I mean, when I'm in a good mood is actually when I write really snarky stuff, like during the shutdown this year. I mean, there was a bit of uncertainty, but I was actually, during the shutdown that we had in the spring, I was actually doing really well, just because my workplace treated us really well, and I was kind of relieved, so it did feel like a weight off my chest, knowing I had some certainty at least. So I started writing a lot, and most of the stories I wrote had this kind of sarcastic tone of like, oh, this stupid fuck, which doesn't really make for compelling writing, but it's funny for little bits of times. That's why I made them short stories.
Well, one of my favorite things was you played a character in
Is it Haunted House?
Yes. Yes.
That's one of my favorite characters I've ever played in a movie.
Oh my god, you were so, like, just a miserable dick, but it was so great. It was one of the ones that you like. You're like, that guy's an asshole, but it's such a good role.
Which is funny, because I'll find there's a handful of times where that movie's been, temporarily leaked onto YouTube, and I'll find, like, comments from people that have no connection to anyone. It's a typical, oh, the acting sucks, this is shit, and all that stuff. But the one comment I'll see, I was like, oh, that one guy's an asshole. They got the right guy for that part. And of course, I don't like anything they said about poor quality elsewhere. I disagree, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
That's the part that I'm still kind of flattered about, is that even people who are watching this movie and hate it, like, God, I hate that frat boy guy. I'm like, oh, that's the goal. You're supposed to hate him.
You're supposed to hate this guy. Because, So I always loved it when people complain about it. Like, that guy was a miserable dick in that movie. The character was horrible. I'm like, did you like it when he died? Yeah. That's the point, man. Okay, it was leading up to that point.
Right.
When I can't remember what movie it was, but when something I was watching on, like, Netflix a while back, but when the miserable dicks lived through the entire movie, and it was like, why? Where's this comeuppance?
It is actually kind of hard to write a compelling version of that. Like, a really good example is It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Those characters are fucking awful, but it's fun to watch. It's compelling to watch them if you're rooting for them to fail and see just what depths they
Oh my god.
do their weird shit.
Dennis and his tools. It's tools! There's duct tape and there's bungee cords and all that stuff. They're tools. I had to have somebody dig in my van the other day when we were at my shop, and he's like, I was like, I need, there's some duct tape and trash bags in the back of my van. And he's like, why do you need duct tape and trash bags? I was like, 'cause tools! And, like, one person actually got that. And I was like, oh, I did it for you. It was a joke. It's like, your grandma's doing a joke for you. All right. Man, it's that's one of the problems is about getting old too, is because the jokes that I will tell people, they're just like, what? I feel that the I think we need a bigger boat is getting to that area.
Yeah, probably. I mean, a lot of kids, like, I've gone to see retro screenings of Jaws, and there's usually kids there.
Yeah.
There's probably going to come a point where that's not quite as prevalent of a line. It's kind of funny because I'm only 31 for what that's worth, but it is interesting knowing just what was popular when I was in high school. Some of it's still kind of stuck around, and other stuff's kind of fizzled out. Like when I was in high school was when specifically Billy Madison and Happy Gilmore were still really popular among high school kids. And I haven't figured out if kids today still watch those or not, but I wouldn't be shocked if I quoted Billy Madison to a room full of high school kids, and a lot of them were like, what's he talking about? I wouldn't be shocked if that were the response I'd get.
Well, what's funny is that I deal with kids, beside my own kids, but almost on a daily basis through my shop, and I'll say something, and you get the ones who, like, I found one guy the other day, and I was sitting there talking about Blue Underground has had a sale through Family Video of all places.
Oh, cool.
And so most of their DVDs were half off, or Blu-rays half off. So I picked up Inferno, New York Ripper, The City of the Living Dead, Shockwaves, and a Django movie that's not a Django movie. It's a Franco Nero movie where he plays a cowboy, and it has they put Django. And I was sitting there talking about these movies, and this kid goes, I love Inferno! And I'm thinking he's going to talk, because I had another guy who was like, oh, Inferno, the more Tom Hanks, that was a great movie. And I'm like, and he goes, oh, man, with the, it makes no sense, and there's, like, just an alchemist for no apparent reason, and the guy, like, and I'm like, you know Inferno? Holy shit! You're like 20. I'm like, God dang, this is awesome. And then we were talking about other movies. He's like, oh, yeah, I love Italian horror films. And he goes, I'm like, and we started talking. We literally talked for, I guarantee you, like an hour and a half about Italian horror films with a kid that's like my kid's age.
That's cool.
And my kids, unfortunately, they get stuck because they got to deal with me being their dad. So they get to learn from through osmosis that they get to gain that knowledge. And it's funny because you just said you're 31. My oldest son's 28.
Oh, okay.
So there's only like a 3-year gap. And even him, he sat there and he looks at me. He's like, man, you're old. He's like, what the hell are you talking about, Dad? I'm like, I am old. Shut up. 46. That's what happens when you get old.
It's kind of funny as I think back to like when I was in high school, or even when my brother was in middle school, which was during the mid-2000s. He and a lot of his friends still liked Monty Python and that kind of stuff. So, it's not like everything old is just something that dads and grandpas referencing. Like people in their early, like guys in their early 20s probably still reference Monty Python and that sort of thing.
Well, that's like I have people that give me shit because I'm an old school metalhead, and I grew up with Black Sabbath, Led Zeppelin, Iron Maiden, Judas Priest, stuff like that. As I got into junior high school, then it became Metallica, Anthrax, Slayer, and now them guys are retiring, and it's like, what the hell? It's like I was sitting there a while back, and they're like, 30th anniversary of this tour, and I went, it was at that tour? What the hell? Standing behind a kid in line one day, and he's got the they had one of the Megadeth tour T-shirts, and I'm like, what? I was like, I was at that tour the first time. So I know that I was at Ozzy's No More Tours tour in '92 when he retired the first time.
That story's will never not be hilarious.
Oh my God.
No More Tours tour that long ago.
Well, it's like I went because I liked Ozzy, but I wanted to see the opening band. I was a huge fan of Prong, still am. Love the band Prong. And everybody's like, who? Prong was Prong. I'm like, oh shit. Now, and like I said, when you find people who there's like I said, you're about young enough to be one of my kid type, and to know that you still have a connection to a lot of the horror movies that came out even a lot earlier than before you were born. And, seeing some of the stuff, do you ever go and look at some of the stuff and go, hey, I like that. I want to tweak that a little bit and put that in a story. Do you ever think of anything like that in your stuff? Or
I'm trying to think. I mean, often I'll find a scene or an element in a movie that I kind of like, but for the most part, I mean, most of the movies I've made at least have elements of certain movies I really like, such as, off the top of my head, like Fargo, Taxi Driver, Silence of the Lambs, little elements of all three of those have made their way into all three of my feature films. Or, Ragnarok took a lot from Evil Dead and Repulsion.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like a mix of psychological horror with the kind of zombie theme.
Do you ever think, I know this back because I have never released any, I've done a little bit of stuff for my movies I want to work on. And I go, okay, this is the movie I want to make. Like, the one I'm writing that I want to get now is my Italian horror film. Do you ever go, I want to make an Italian horror film? Or I want to make a 80s slasher? Or I want to make, do you ever think about anything like that? Or do you just go, okay, you know what, I want this, I want this, I want this, I want this, I want this. We're going to put that in here, and we're going to shake it up. This is what we're going to get.
I'm trying to think. I guess more or less, usually when I make a movie, it's like a scenario pops into my head, and then how much I evolve the scenario from there to determine whether it becomes a movie or not. There's all kinds of times I'll think of a scene, and that'll be it. It'll just be that scene, and that obviously doesn't become a movie. It's just like Primordial, I always had this thought in mind of like a female contract killer, and what's her background, what led her there, what's she doing otherwise, then everything else kind of evolved. There was a few key scenes, like the scene involving a fish-hook was there from the beginning, and just this kind of psychological downward spiral was always there, but it was a lot of like what led to that, where does it go, what are the consequences, and then it kind of spiraled out from there. So as far as genre and stuff, I didn't really have a genre in mind. I mean, when I did Ragnarok, I had a little more of focus, because Primordial, the only real debate anyone has over it is whether it counts as horror or not. So with Ragnarok, I wanted to make something that was definitely horror. That way, I could show it at festivals or conventions themed for horror. There'd be no doubt or question of whether or not it's horror.
Why is this at the horror? Why are we seeing this at a horror convention? This is an action movie or whatever.
Right. So I had that. With Ragnarok, I also wanted to have less dialogue. That way, it could be more accessible to international audiences. There's still dialogue in it, but it's not like you need to know American economics or have lived in America your whole life to get it. Like, I want it to be something that somebody who lives in Central Africa could still watch and at least get on a base level, even if they aren't familiar with American culture.
Cool. I mean, I keep going back because, I don't know, at one point I started writing a movie, and I was in a really bad place when I was writing it. And it was a really dark movie. I got probably 3/4 of the way done with it. And then my life shifted to the positive really hard. And I just never had the passion to go back and finish that one because it was such a dark place that I'm like, I don't know if I could actually make this movie now. And if I did, it would be half-assed.
Yeah, sometimes I think you have to go for it when it's current, too.
Yeah.
So just for me, Primordial was a product of anger. Like, Hellhounds was a product of, anger and uncertainty. I wrote that when I graduated college and couldn't get a job and was prone to drinking a lot. And then Primordial, some of that stuff actually came about from experiences I had during that time, and when I felt like they were in the past, cool, I can finally write about them. But, there was still underlying anger and frustration. And Ragnarok, like I said, was kind of a product of, things were going fine for so long that I guess there was a sense of boredom. Maybe that I never thought I'd experience due to a lack of conflicts as a mix. There's boredom and depression is what fueled that one.
I always think it's funny because I'm one of them guys that my wife hates it because she's such an optimist. She always looks at everything's like, oh, okay, this is going to work out. Everything's going to work out. And me, I'm always the pessimist because I always assume the worst, and then when something good happens, I'm like, oh, hey, look, that worked out,
I guess that's kind of how I am of too. I don't consider myself a pessimist, but I always kind of try to expect the worst out of it when something good happens.
And you're like, oh, cool, that worked out well. And it's funny because I've written comic books, I've written movies and stuff like that. But like I said, I've never, and I always worry about what people will think about them when they're done. And some of that stuff will probably never see the light of day because I'm actually, there's a movie script I wrote that is so uber violent. And mind you, I have no problem with violence in movies and stuff like that. It's what, it's artistic freedom, and I think some of the stuff works great in movies and stuff like that. Like, one of my favorite movies is The Raid, and that's all that is violence from beginning to end.
Yeah, The Raid's awesome.
And, but now I got a script, and I'm like, dude, no. That's not me anymore, and I don't think I can do this. Do you ever have anything like that happen where you're just like...
I'm trying to think. So there was this movie I wrote in high school called Depravity. It was a product of me being on painkillers and thinking of Blue Velvet back when I first watched that movie, which is still one of my favorites. So I actually made a version of it with action figures. So when I say Hellhounds is my first feature film, that's kind of a lie. There's this movie, Depravity, it's a copyright nightmare because it does have a kick-ass soundtrack. I made it at home with
what you had.
It was action figures, but I'd throw any song on there, so it's got like Merciful Fate and Slayer and Kenny G's even in there. But so anyways, I wrote a script of that, and decided to try and make it actual. That was going to be my first feature. I finished the script, but I just never, I don't know, it's like there was a lot of character inconsistencies, so I decided to just kind of revamp it and made it primordial instead, basically.
Cool. You talk about putting music and stuff like that. Do you ever think about okay, this scene would be perfect for this band, but there's no way in hell that you're going to get it, so you're like, okay, well, what's the next best thing I can fit in there?
Yeah.
Do you have somebody doing your music, or do you do music, or?
Well, it's a mix. So for Ragmore, actually the lead actor did the industrial instrumental soundtrack, and I love the way that turned out. There is a band whom I genuinely love called Thy Light. They're a Brazilian depressive suicidal black metal band, so very niche. Well, my understanding is that's one guy doing all the music and one guy writes the lyrics. They have 2 albums out, so actually their entire second album appears in Primordial, and in Ragmork I used 2 songs from their first album on the soundtrack for that. Now, all the time, though, I do picture bands I could never afford, of course, when writing scenes. So then I'll think of a more realistic option and then go from there. Of course, like in Primordial, the mass shooting scene towards the end, originally wanted to use a song by Dismember called Override of the Overture. The song I actually used was Thy Light, the bridge. And now that I've edited that scene and used that song, I can't even picture Dismember's song in there. Would have been cool, but no, Thy Light's song actually fits the tone better than Dismember's would have.
Okay, if you could get one song, one band for one movie, what would it be?
Well, without money concerns.
No money concerns, no nothing. Like if I know there's bands that have almost never put their music to movies.
There's a lot. The one that immediately comes to my head is I just had it on in the car is the song Sister Morphine by Rolling Stones from their Sticky Fingers album. I did kind of picture some sort of drug overdose or some sort of dramatic drawn out death scene on the side of a road set to that song. So at this moment that's the one that sticks out because I just heard it. There are a bunch of other options that would probably be more fresh in my mind too, but that's one I was listening to like, oh, this would be a cool movie. There's no way I can afford the Rolling Stones.
No. That's like as I had written the script. I written the scene, and in my head it was I had something from Demon Board here, and it was the big operatic beginning, and then as it built, then the horror began, and then that's when the music would kick in, and I'm sitting there trying to figure, and I was like, I wonder how much it would cost. It was realistically, years ago, when I was trying to get into comics and stuff like that, I wrote a treatment to bring all these like 80s TV characters that only had maybe like one season or 8 episodes, or they never got like a full run. And I was trying to figure out how to bring them into like an Avengers style. So I had written a script with Manimal, Street Hawk, all these things like that. I'm like, these guys have got to be cheap. You know, I couldn't imagine, you know, this character would be expensive. So I started getting hold of it. And some of them were like, yeah, you know, just, yeah, no problem. You know, just if it does make money, we get something off the back end. And you're like, okay.
So that's pretty lenient compared to a lot of the...
And then I got a hold of Glenn Larson's people, because he had Manimal. And I'm like, oh man, I should be able to get Manimal like 8 episodes. It didn't, you know, I get a whole season. We should be able to do something with this. And they're like wanting a big chunk of money up front. And I'm like, this is going to be a self-published comic book that's probably only going to get like 2,000 issues made of issue 1. And that's if I'm lucky. I might sell 2,000. And they're wanting a big chunk of money up front, then money off the back end and stuff like that. And I'm like, yeah, no, I can't use those characters. No. It's amazing that because like someone wouldn't even talk to me. I want to say the people with the Power of Matthew Starr was one of the characters I was looking at. I want to say that one. They wouldn't even, like, I never heard back from them. A couple of them were like, yep, this is how much it is. This is how much it is to do, and it's like for anything. So if you were to make try to do a movie, same amount of money as if you were to try to do one issue of a comic book. And I'm like, yeah, no, that's not going to happen. That's way too much money for a guy that just wants to do something to bring back the 1980s property. But trying to get, like I said, licensed stuff was I have one buddy who's like, oh yeah, I want to do this. I'm like, no, you don't. No, you don't. And he get back with me. He's like, yeah, you're right. You don't want to deal with licensed stuff. I was like,
and if it's a fan thing that you won't ever make money off of, it's one thing. But if it's something you actually plan to invest a bit of time and money into, then...
See, that's what I thought. I figured, okay, if I printed, and I did this book, and I printed it, maybe we got 1,000 copies of a book, 500 or whatever, it's going to be a low print run, that it wouldn't be a bother. And they're like, no, we need the money. We need that money now before you do anything. And I get some of them because, if not, everybody would just be like, okay, well, we're going to do this. And yeah, I didn't make any money off of that. Because I know that what was it, a couple years back, Warner Brothers went after everybody doing fan films.
Oh, really?
I think it was Warner Brothers. But I know that they went after people because they're like, no, you can't do that, can't do that, can't do that, can't do that. Because people were making money off of it.
If you're making money,
but it wasn't the people who made it that were making money off of it. Because, I don't know, did you ever see the one Grayson? It's a short film guy took it, Robin gets out, comes back as Robin, or Dick Grayson comes back as Robin, has to go, and it's literally, I think it's only like 10 minutes long. But so many people, I mean, this may be completely wrong, this is what I understand, so take that with a grain of salt. It made its rounds to become on like bootleg compilations.
Oh, okay.
So it was like the Aliens, the Batman, the one where he fights the Predator. Then they had Grayson. They had World's Finest. They had all these ones like that, and people would put them on compilation discs and then sell them at conventions. So the guys that put everything together weren't making any money off of it, but like this guy over here was.
So the creator of it was
the
one getting screwed.
Yeah. It's like when Andrew Bernarski, the guy who did Leatherface in the remake, he was Lobo in the Lobo's Paramilitary Christmas special. It was a fan film made. I think a college student did it, and that was available. I think you can still find it on YouTube, but now, because a lot of people just use that as their test reel, basically to get that out there and be like, hey, this is what I can do.
Yeah, that's a good way to do it too, usually.
Yeah, because you take a character somebody knows, instead of taking a character that nobody knows. It's like I'm currently, I don't even know the logistics of doing this. The script I'm writing now, the characters I created, I have a couple of cosplayers I know who cosplay as like Resident Evil characters and stuff like that. So I'm going to shoot little short films with my character against Resident Evil characters, and I'm not going to, that won't make any money, but if I do get everything finished, I thought about putting them as like a special Easter egg featurette on like the DVD or whatever when I'm done. Just because like, hey, this is the character I created and it's fighting Claire from Resident Evil or whatever. So I don't even know the logistics of even doing something like that, because I know there's the fair use practice and stuff like that you can.
Yeah, I don't know the logistics either, but I do know if it's something you're planning to sell, that probably wouldn't go well on it as a special feature. It'd be best if that were just available in some capacity.
Yeah, I get like, hey, this is like, it's online, check it out. Then if you like that character, it'll be in this movie.
Yeah, that would be probably a better way to
Yeah.
go about it.
But do you have anything coming up that you're working on? I know you're working with other people and doing anything else. What you got coming up?
So I have no other movie ideas at this moment, really. I might try to as I've been writing a lot of short stories, I might try to publish a short story book. A couple of my friends have done that, like Henrik put out this compilation of kid-friendly scary stories that some other people, he got some other people to write, and he edited a compilation. So there's that. One of my friends from college, she published a poetry book. One of my other friends wrote a Western I've been meaning to read. So because a lot of my friends have gotten into book writing, I might try to do, I've always wanted to do a novel, but I just don't have it in me to sit down and really write one now. But I have a lot of short stories. That's probably what I'll try to put out next. Especially as I wrote a lot during the quarantine, and a lot of it, I think it's pretty funny. What I really got into about writing short stories is when making a movie, especially with no budget, there's this kind of box I find myself in where I've got to figure out, like, okay, so who can I get to play this character? Who's okay with letting their kids say that line or play that role? What location am I going to get for this scene is okay with me splattering blood over the wall? How am I going to pretend this guy got his jaw shot off? Like, stuff like that. But when you write a story, you can just write what the hell you want.
That's one of my things. I have buddies that both write comics and draw comics. And they're like, I love writing comics because you can put whatever you want into a comic book, and then the artists are like, I don't want to draw that shit. That's too complicated. Because yeah, it's not like making a movie. You can do whatever you want. But have you ever run into stuff where you literally went to make a scene and just goes, yeah, this is not, I can't do this. Like you talk about somebody getting their jaw shot off,
Right.
and been like, okay, that real well on paper. Now I just don't have any way of actually doing it. Have you had to like cut stuff because of that you wanted to put in movies? And
not necessarily. You see, when I write for a movie, I try to think of what I could realistically do. Sometimes I'll downplay certain effects that I wrote in order to make production a little more practical. Like for the mass shooting scene in Primordial, in my head I pictured her with some high-capacity machine gun just blasting a bunch of rounds, shooting out windows, blowing a lot of holes on people and stuff. Trying to do that on a low budget and also have it look still something. If it were a comedy, I could have just done whatever the hell I wanted, made it look kind of stupid, but it's not intentionally a comedy at that point.
Yeah,
even though there's funny scenes early.
Yeah, like the old 60s and 70s westerns where they're just like, oh, and then they fall down, there's no blood, everybody's just, oh, he's shot. There's no hole, there's no blood, there's no ricochet, no hole in the wall.
So, there's things like that to where I'll have to downplay stuff that would be easily done in a Hollywood production. I'll have to downplay in order to make it more practical on my end.
If you could take and money's no budget, or money's no issue on a budget, and you could go any genre you wanted to do, what would you do?
Well, so the answer I've had for a while, there's this story I wrote that takes place in Alaska, and it's about these domestic terrorists who are in a conflict with this militia group. It's about this guy who, without considering how shady and potentially extremist that militia group is, joins them out of fear for his family's safety, and then basically becomes like a modern day Western, but with, themes of whether that was the right thing to do or not. Now, in recent years, I've come to realize that the plot of that movie is almost identical to the old Mad Max, so I would really have to revamp it a lot to make it more original. For what it's worth, I wrote the very first draft of that when I was a kid. It was about the CIA back then, and then in college it became more about the vigilante militia group and stuff. But yeah, no, that's one. I would want it to, kind of look along the lines of No Country for Old Men. I would want it to be about whatever budget that was and have that same kind of look, but in the snow and.
Yeah, that's one thing that I literally wrote a script years ago, and one of the big things was it was going to be snow. That was what the main character of the entire movie was going to be the snow. And then I realized how hard it is to shoot in snow and make it look good. And
finding snow.
Oh yeah. Well, I was like, okay, it's snowing, and I ran out, was like started trying to film stuff, and then I was like, okay, this looks horrible. I was like, shit, you can't see nothing because the wind was blowing, the snow was blowing. So I'm like thinking I can get this big cool scene, and nothing. And then of course you're out there and you're running on batteries, and when it's cold, your batteries go dead like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, have you ever ran into anything like logistics wise? Like if you sit there like, okay, I got everything set up, we're doing this, then you're like, oh, don't plug in the batteries. Okay. Shit.
I'm sure I have. Nothing immediately comes to mind. Working around weather, though, is what comes to mind. Like around here, if anyone is listening is unfamiliar with Ohio winters, it can be 60 degrees one day and then 20 degrees and snowing a lot a few days later. So, for whatever reason, that tends to be the time I shoot movies, just when I'm done getting through production and scheduling and writing and the holiday season. It's usually about February by the time I'm actively shooting something. And then, of course, there's always a risk of snow.
Yeah.
So, I mean, sometimes I'll try to use it to my advantage. I'll try to shoot the movie so that snow isn't a continuity issue, and if it's there, we can use it for that scene. And if it's not there a few scenes later, it's because it's an Ohio winter.
And the worst comes to worst, you can do the Hogan's Heroes, and it's always snow on the ground.
Yeah.
Always snow on the ground. No matter the whole entire run of that show, there's snow on the ground. That's why they have to worry about continuity issues. The dumb shit I found out a while back that I did not know about Hogan's Heroes, of all things, I found out that it was Ilsa Shootable for the SS was filmed on the sets of Hogan's Heroes, and the fact that it's always winter on Hogan's Heroes. And I'm like, no, it isn't. And then I watched Hogan's Heroes for like, I don't know how many days straight, and went, it's always winter on Hogan's Heroes. No continuity issue that way. Now, I know that there is a relatively small but comparably big, or how do I say this? The Dayton movie family, whatever you call it, is it seems like and like we talked about this before we went on air about how a few years ago there was only you only get like a movie, maybe 2 movies a year, if that, from everybody working in the area. Now it seems like, man, this guy's got a movie going, this guy's got a movie going, this guy's got a movie going. This guy's knocked out 3 this year. Or is that how is that affecting everything? Is it getting people more paying attention to the Dayton film scene, or is it actually like taking away because people are like, that's oversaturated?
Well, I'd say it really depends on the person. I'd say it depends on the individual perceiving that. Because, I think it's really good that the technology allows more people to make more movies, especially because I see more college-aged or about to finish high school-aged kids trying to pursue filmmaking or even having decent-looking stuff out there already, which is awesome. I'd say that with more movies out, I'm not going to sit here and say, like, there's too many movies being made, because that's not true. You want a well-thriving scene with multiple filmmakers. I would say it's not as unique as it was a long time ago, like when Andy Cobb was making movies, or when Eric first started putting movies out, that was more rare at that time for someone to have a feature film out and ready. Nowadays, it's more likely that someone who's an aspiring filmmaker can meet that goal. And it's like any other bit of technology, how making TV shows is more doable at home or in a smaller environment now than it was a long time ago, or even doing podcasts. You don't need FCC regulations and that sort of thing like you needed for radio back in the day.
It's we were talking about this a couple days ago. That back in the day, you had pirate radio stations and you had public access TV and stuff like that. Now that this makes it easier. Now you've got technology. I mean, literally, I have a shit older phone. I can film an entire movie on this.
Yeah.
I watched Unsane a couple years ago now. That's what is a Soderbergh movie. And he's shot all on. I think he shot all on an iPod.
That's
or not iPhone. Yeah, it's and Unsane. Yeah, because I let my phone, my computer last.
I think I heard that title when it was coming out.
Yeah, it's actually I enjoyed the movie. I'm not saying it wasn't predictable, but I love movies that some people think are garbage. People think this movie's the greatest movie ever, and I think it's garbage. My kids and anybody who's watched this podcast knows where I stand on Titanic. I have an ongoing joke that I have seen Titanic once, and that's 3 hours of my life I will never get back. But I've watched Blackula every Halloween since I was a little kid. And I love Blackula. And I will go back to that movie every time. It's one of my comfort films. It's, let's see.
So yeah, I just looked up the trivia. It says, the film was shot entirely on the iPhone 7, which is what I have right here, plus and 4K using the app Filmic Pro.
Cool. I mean, that's insane, and that's a big budget. Like I said, who's the director on it? Is it Soderbergh?
It's Soderbergh. Let's find out. Yeah,
Steven Soderbergh. That's amazing. And then they got, was it last winter when they started shooting all those commercials with the iPhone, with the new iPhone, and you had the guy that directed, I want to say the guy that directed John Wick, directed a snowball fight with kids on an iPhone.
Oh, that's cool. I missed that.
Yeah, and it's amazing what you can do now. Just because, I mean, literally when I started, and even when I met Andy, it was all on VHS.
Yeah.
And I remember him because at one point I found a 8mm camera. And he's like, sweet, and then it kind of went along the wayside because we just didn't have logistics and time to hanging out. And actually, I thought about it because I actually refound my 8mm camera, and I was like, oh, sweet, man, I can shoot like some bizarre, like dream sequence with this. And then I started seeing how much it's going to cost to buy the film, how much it's going to cost for the, to develop it and stuff like that. And I'm like, oh, there's an app for that on the phone. Sweet. So I don't have to do that. You can like the one you can make everything look like an old VHS tape now.
Yeah.
And I kind of want to do that if I ever do it. If I ever actually get my movie done, I want to do an actual regular version and then the VHS version. It's just the same version with like the tracking and shit in the background and stuff like that. We're getting to. Actually, I want to. This is going to be. I hate to say this, but this is going to be my first one with the extra at the end. We're going to put the last half of this interview. If you're still cool with doing some more.
Yeah.
Okay. This is going to be the end of the non-Patreon. So for all you guys who aren't on the Patreon, this is where we're going to end. And those who are on Patreon, we're going to continue and we're going to talk about some more stuff. But this is going to be, like I said, it'll be the first one, and if it doesn't work out, we'll tack that back on later if people will listen to it. But that's the end. So, as always, like and subscribe, do all that fun stuff. Check us out on Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, YouTube. Check out our Patreon. And as always, this is brought to you by RU Game, the best comic book store in all of Piqua, Ohio. And because it's the only, no, it's not the only one, but it's the only one that has video games, comic books, toys, DVDs, anything else I can sell, I will sell. All right.